Well, welcome to the Red Chair. Today we have our very good friend, Itxaso from Notion. Itxaso, so good to see you again.
Thank you so much.
We speak so often about so many things, so many
Exactly.
deals, but finally you're on the Red Chair.
I'm pleased to be here.
Oh, it's our pleasure. So we know you very well, but not everybody does. So who is Itxaso?
Yeah, so I am Itxaso. I'm a general partner at Notion Capital, which is a venture capital firm based in London. We've been investing for around 15 years in B2B software. Probably at the time, we were a little bit early in this wave, but we pioneered all this B2B SaaS investing in Europe. One of our main principles is to be very close to the founders after we invest. And so we have a dedicated team that helps the companies in the portfolio, mainly on go-to-market and on talent. And as we only do B2B software, which is SaaS applications, infrastructure, open source, and so on, most of those companies have pretty similar problems at the same stages of development. So we have been able to almost productize and standardize.
You have a playbook.
Exactly. We have a playbook from 0 to 1, 1 to 5, 5 to 25, and so on, right? And so we have a dedicated team helping the companies. And I guess because of that, our founders really love us. We like to be very close to our founders. We invest across Europe. We do mainly Series A. Personally, do you want me to tell you a little bit about myself?
If you want.
Okay, so I joined Notion 5 years ago, and in fact, a lot of that happened in Portugal, because prior to Notion, I was running Microsoft Ventures M12 in Europe. So I launched it in Europe, and I was doing also a lot of those B2B software investments, anything that drives cloud consumption, AI, computer vision, and the new generation, the generative AI is very interesting for the cloud providers like Microsoft. So those are the investments I was doing. And I did an investment in a company that you guys are investors too, Unbabel, a very interesting company based here in Portugal. They do machine translation with the human in the loop. And so I overlapped on the board with Chris Todman, who is one of the founding partners at Notion. Yeah. And that's how I ended up learning much more about what Notion does, and ultimately joined them.
Very good, very good. And so you said that, Notion was one of the first to sort of get into the B2B SaaS thing, which is now sort of bread and butter for all the VCs, but it was really something new 15 years ago, definitely.
Correct.
Up to 10 years ago, it was something really emerging. How did the Notion team come up with this concept, and this was already going on in the US, but not so much in Europe. So, you were not there entirely at the beginning, but what happened? How did you come up with this?
I mean, I do have the story, and I do know the story, obviously, but they didn't come up with a theme. Rather, they had been building companies that they were starting in this trend of B2B software. Probably they built, the Notion founders built the first European fast-growing SaaS company. The company was called Message Labs. It was a cybersecurity business, a company that was scanning email on the cloud. So remember when viruses were coming through email generally, and we were all opening those links, and it was something was installing, destroying our computers. Correct. So they built a software that was scanning those emails before they were landing on your computer. And so they built a company from 0 revenue to 150 million in revenue in 6 years. So it was the third fastest growing company in the world in the cloud after Salesforce and Webex. In fact, they failed to go public in 2008. The market crashed. and so Symantec was offered them a pretty good 700 million acquisition at the time.
And they sold.
And they were a little bit freaking out because of the market, and taking into account the growth and the 150 million. To be honest, the multiple was not that great, but they took it and they set up Notion ultimately the day after with their own money, trying to invest in the next generation of SaaS. They had invented almost themselves that recurring revenue ARR, going from on-premises and perpetual licenses to a recurring license. Almost they were the ones inventing that, and so they just followed that trend, right?
And then things really changed completely in Europe. Now you were at Microsoft, now you're at Notion. What did you see as the evolution of the founders over the last 15 years?
It has been phenomenal, I think. I mean, you've seen it too. We are very bullish in Europe because, in fact, I would probably say I moved to London in 2010 from San Francisco, where I did my PhD research. And when I moved to London, I really couldn't think that the ecosystem was going to become so vibrant and active, building companies, exiting companies, and recycling money, talent, and technology ultimately, right? Which is what makes an entrepreneurial ecosystem really dynamic. And so I think London was probably the first place for this to happen in Europe. But places like Berlin, Paris, Amsterdam, Madrid, Barcelona, Stockholm and Lisbon, right, followed with several unicorns and people who have been trained and experienced what we call that growth mindset and develop that idea of building companies that can follow that venture trajectory and we can invest in, and they are looking for building global businesses from a start.
So the ambition is here now and the capacity is here.
Correct.
So what is not here yet in your view?
I would probably say we are still a little bit behind on exits, on size of exits in Europe, and most of the companies in Europe set up US offices very early on, specifically in B2B SaaS, which is most of the things that we do.
All the Portuguese unicorns ultimately are Portuguese American, or almost all of them.
Correct. And so I do think that really helps. I do think that is becoming easier and easier to build European-wide businesses. So there are some countries like Germany or France where you can build a pretty sizable business just in those countries. But I think entrepreneurs are looking beyond those boundaries of their own countries and building European-wide businesses and regulatory. Well, some of the regulations are pretty limiting. We think of AI and things like that, and privacy. Europe is definitely leading on regulation. But another way, there are some regulations that have become much more open in terms of the banking and the passporting and things like that, which has definitely made a little bit or opened up Europe for founders. And I think we are very, very optimistic and bullish. And I think talent is incredible
across Europe.
And I think we definitely believe we can.
Yeah, I guess, capital raising is also difficult, particularly for funds, but also for startups, if you compare it to the US, right? Do you feel that or not?
I think it's changing too. Probably maybe has changed even more after this big boom that we had during COVID, where companies and funds could raise money ultimately easily, and then the market slowed down. But I think it has slowed down for everyone in Europe and in the US. And I think ourselves, we've closed now our fifth fund a a couple of months ago. It was a 300 million fund. You know that we were oversubscribed. We have a mix of investors from Europe, from the US. Obviously, we are UK based, and we have UK investors too, even Middle Eastern investors. So I do think that if you have given consistent returns and you have followed a consistent strategy, your LPs
Will back you.
Will back you and will follow
Right.
you. And
if they're institutional and if they know the asset class.
Correct, exactly. So I think we had investors with us, following us for the last 3-4 funds, and they continue to invest in this fund. And we also got,
of course, in
new
London
ones,
London is known as the center of VC in Europe, and therefore the amount of sophisticated LPs is much larger than in other countries where that doesn't happen, right?
It could be, but the UK is not the main place where we got our LPs. In fact, we have a big number of LPs from Europe and in the US, and for the first time now in the Middle East too. It has taken a little while to build the relationships there, but finally, I think we've gotten there.
Practice market a little bit. Yes.
Yeah.
Since you invest across Europe, but you are Spanish ultimately.
I am
you
Spanish.
are Basque.
Yeah.
I used to live in the Basque country as well. So what's your view on the Spanish sort of ecosystem and all the evolution that you've seen?
I mean, I think it's it has been incredible for me to see this evolution. I've never worked in Spain, in fact. I grew up there, but I'm an engineer by background. Very soon, as an engineer,
you left.
You leave and you work for car manufacturers. I went to Germany, worked for Daimler, the car manufacturer. Yeah, for a couple of years. Honestly, the most boring thing I've ever done in my life. But hey, I went through that too. And so from there, I just moved around and then moved to San Francisco, and I stayed a little bit in Barcelona. But I basically lived in all these different places, but I never worked in Spain per se. And so since I think I moved to London, and London started picking up, and obviously an ecosystem like a Spanish one were still very early on. In the last 4 or 5 years, we've really started to pick up, and I think a couple of things have helped on that. One is, I think there are some extraordinary investors in Spain. They are small, but they are extraordinary investors with the right mindset, meaning dealing or building the right relationships with the founders, because there are countries and investors where they are taking advantage of the founders and basically giving valuations that are way too low, taking too much equity, destroying the cap table. And for those founders, it's impossible to go international. Yes. And I think the fact that the Spanish investors have been very good at structuring rounds, very good at pushing the companies to go international very early on, because they are conscious that the Spanish market is small and that the Spanish investors, maybe they don't have the capacity so far. Maybe in the future, but they are not very big ones, right? Maybe Seaya is starting to be a little bit bigger one now that we're having a couple of offices in Europe, right?
Yes.
But other than that, it's pretty limited. But they are good investors, genuinely. That has helped, and that has pushed founders to also go international and to create those unicorns that we know in Spain, like the Globus and the Cabify. And again, building this new generation of growth mindset founders. And so people today, when I studied engineering, I went to work for Daimler. That was like the dream.
Of course.
That was the dream, Today, anyone who is studying in Spain is literally thinking, you're an engineer. Why would you go for a big corporation if you can do a startup? So this is a new career path. This is something that is today very well accepted. And I think that has accelerated the ecosystem, the appetite to build companies, to think global. People go abroad much better.
Yeah, we used to see the Spanish companies really go first Spain and then Latin America. And as you say, in the last 4 to 5 years, they've now started thinking really globally.
Correct.
From day one, particularly going to the US, and it's a totally different market.
100%. But it has happened very quickly, right?
Very quickly and quite recently.
Yes.
I would say that in comparison, the Portuguese founders were already more global, because I think Portugal is such a small market that they had no other chance, right?
Yeah,
it had
correct.
to really go.
Correct.
But I think Spain definitely is it's a powerhouse now, and it produces
Absolutely.
incredible founders, and we love working the market.
Yeah, absolutely. I've invested there already, so it has taken a couple of years from my venture career, but at least we invested in Kobe. There, and we are very happy about it. Yes. And I invested in some other Spanish founders, even though they are not in Spain, but thinking global and
right.
being based anywhere around the world, right?
And we've even invested in foreign founders in Spain, which is even more incredible.
Yes.
So there's also lots of foreign founders in Spain, and we've done a few deals.
I don't blame them. I will go to live there easily.
Of course, yes. You're not bad to live here in the south. And everybody talks about AI now. What's your comment on this? I mean, what's the cross between SaaS, B2B SaaS, and AI? How do you see the future?
So as I said, I've been looking at AI for many years, because at Microsoft that was the bread and butter, I would probably say. And at Notion, we've been doing investments in AI for a long time. In fact, last year we sold a company in the autonomous vehicles space that it looks like we've forgotten that wave. But we've been doing AI for many years, right? Even Unbabel in the machine
10 years,
translation
basically.
space. I think obviously the generative AI wave has increase the appetite for people to look into it for several reasons. One is because now there are pre-trained models that you can use easily, that are easily available for people. You don't need to train those models, and data has always been a limitation, right?
Yes.
So
and
that's
the quality of data.
Correct, exactly. And so today is not a hype. We are all using ChatGPT, and so this is not a hype. This is a reality, right? So I think that's probably the reason this hype came in. So I think we've bucket, or we look at the AI space, we bucket it in 3 different areas. One is the AI transversal tools. Think of LLMs. And those are very horizontal. And if you look into it, 80% of the 15, 20, 80 billion that they might be going into this space, I think 80% of that comes from corporates, are making big bets in this space in terms of the investment. And those are the OpenAIs, the Mistral in Europe, all of those horizontal solutions. There is a second subset of tools, which are enablers. Think of how companies can use those LLMs. How do you train your own specific vertical? How do you make sure there is no bias? How do you ensure there is not going to be a data breach? How do you all of those enablers tools, right? And then the third,
and those are coming up now, right?
And those are coming up now.
This is the moment to
exactly. But still, we need companies to be using the LLMs
in
order to be able to use the enablers.
Yes.
So I think there is a little step still to get that adoption, right? And then there is the third one, which I think is really short term, and it's happening right now, and is the integration of LLMs and AI in general into existing solutions, existing products. So how do you embed these AI solutions into applications?
And how do you see that happening specifically in the market?
I think that is already a reality. And I think that is the easiest way today for companies to start buying those products, and for entrepreneurs to get a short-term
Yes, integration of that technology.
and return on investment.
But it is
right?
much more than using ChatGPT to do your marketing campaign, right?
Oh,
So
many
give us some
more
examples of things that are happening in terms of quick integration of AI into a B2B SaaS company. What kind of use cases can you think of?
So, I mean, just some examples. We talked about Unbabel. One of the things that many people don't see that behind the scenes, Unbabel has built a quality estimation tool. So when you do machine translation, you you know that the quality of those translations are usually maybe around 90%. A company cannot be using this for customers because 90% you cannot
Not good enough.
is not good enough. So they build a quality estimation tool which also uses AI, which basically gives you a percentage of how accurate the translation is. And so in order to improve that, they have embedded a human in the loop that corrects those translations, feeds back.
Many humans, not only one.
Many humans. I mean, in fact, thousand. I think they have around 200,000
so.
semi-professional translations around the world.
All around the world.
So it's a big network. Exactly. It is a bigger company. This is not a 10 people shop around the corner. You're right. But basically, they give an understanding to those translators how good the translation that they got in, when they can send that to the customer because of that quality estimation. So that's a good example, right?
And that's why Unbabel is really different than having just a simple automatic translation on Google or any other sort of just pure generative AI, right?
So that's a good example of AI.
So it means that basically APIs are now being built to use generative AI models to specific cases. That's the sort of the short term
correct
that you're alluding to.
Is using data in many cases, and I think the most exciting part for me is the use of the data to personalize experiences. So since I was at Microsoft, I've been thinking about this use case. So you and I receive board decks all the time. Every quarter, every company sends us a board deck, and you get that on your Outlook email. And every quarter, what you do, I receive a board deck from a company, Kobe in Spain. What do? I open Kobe's folder, I create on the board folder, and I create October 2023, and I save there. How is that email is not suggesting me exactly that this is the board deck with this number, with this name?
Yes.
Is this where you automatically recording?
Yes. We still lose a lot of time doing manual tasks.
100%. And so all these workflows is just a matter of personalization. Every product, as soon as I land on their page, and you know that I'm a big believer of product-led growth, as soon as I land on those pages, they should be pre-populated with my folders, my companies, my LinkedIn connections, and so on. Yes. So that
you already see that in some applications, namely in Mail, Gmail, and so on, where it suggests where you should save and so on. But there's so much that can be done.
So much.
But it's complicated, isn't it? I mean, how many people do you actually... Because you need people to do that. I mean, the 100%. Generative AI will not generate
100%
that idea by itself. Mm-hmm. Someone has to sort of get it done.
Yes.
I think, for example, of, Siri or other sort of voice assistants that are still not even in other languages, so they don't understand. If you mix Spanish and English, they'll, Siri will be super confused. You
are
so
absolutely
there's so many things that have to be done yet still, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And those are basic applications.
Super basic, but the basic is not done, right?
It's 100%. I'm in fact, I was a couple of weeks ago, my husband worked in voice recognition many years ago, before iPhone. I'm talking about even remote control. How do you change the TV without taking the remote control? Right. I'm talking years and years ago, right? And it had big limitations with my accent. You can imagine. I mean, this was a big confrontation issue in our family always, because the applications that he was building, they were never able to understand my accent. And 2 weeks ago, I told him, hey, I was dictating messages, and it is incredible how much better it has become. You're right.
Yes.
Today, not
It's
sure
much
it's because
easier.
it's
But the
much
problem is
easier.
when you mix languages, right? And then it gets confused
Oh
because
my
you have
God.
to choose which language you're going
Yes,
to dictate.
of course.
Which is not how life works, right? In people like
100%.
us are always kind of mixing at least two languages.
You're right. You're right.
And so the future is complex and it's going to take some time, but it's super bright. How many founders have you seen, or what kind of characteristics have you seen that make founders really stand out? Because you obviously, all of us, we're investing in people. So what are the characteristics that you think are really outstanding in the sort of success cases you've had throughout your career?
I think founders, to me, really, when you talk to them, I think they really need to be thinking of breaking walls to make it work. Really determined to build big businesses and make it work. And I think for that, you really need to have your own opinion. So many of the founders are a little bit
difficult.
I wasn't going to use that.
But it's a good sign normally.
But it is.
Maybe not too difficult.
But also being able to listen.
Yes.
And take feedback. Yes. But being opinionated. They have their own opinion. You know what I mean? They shouldn't be listening to everyone and going in every other direction. So I do
they need to know who to listen to.
Yeah, for sure. But at least have a criteria to filter and to evaluate and to test things quickly. So I like people who test things quickly. I'm a little bit like I have very little patience. And so I like people when they want to test things, they want to iterate. I need to feel that sense of urgency.
Yes.
So I think determination, sense of urgency, and I would probably say also resilience.
Yes, grit and resilience are absolutely key.
Absolutely key. You can't get disappointed and calm down when things are not going great.
You also need to surround yourself with exceptional people, better 100%. Than you, right? And sometimes that's the problem. You end up not doing that, and then that's when companies
100%
don't really go anywhere.
Yes, I like to see that founders are really willing to hire the best people. Globally.
Not locally.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Koshla always talks about, think about who you need instead of who you know.
Yes.
And so go beyond your network and whoever you know to find the people that you really need. Yeah. And I think that is critical, right? The best people to build your company.
Critical. Great piece of advice just to finish this Red Chair episode. Itxaso, so good to see you always.
It was really great to be here with you.
And to cooperate and co-invest with Notion. And,
I know.
I'm sure we'll do many other things over the next years
Certainly.
and decades.
Certainly. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.